welcome to another fantastic event by AFBE. I do call it fantastic because today is going to be really fantastic. For those people that are not familiar with the Chess Club series, it's a series that was actually created to help people strategically navigate their career. Today's event is something that's really close to a lot of people, which is negotiating. And we've got a fantastic speaker basically ready to give us some ins and outs of negotiating. Just to go through the agenda today, we're currently doing the introduction. Sara will start the presentation in about five minutes. And then we have a Q&A at 6:20 and then hopefully finish at 6:45. So the first question, just to know where everyone's from. What city are you joining us from? Oh, fantastic. We've got people from Yorkshire. Oh, wow, got people from Ghana. Oh, Scotland. Hopefully the weather is good in Scotland because it's always cold there. Oh, wow. We'll give you 20 more seconds. Cardiff. Nairobi. Oh, we got a lot of people from different parts of Africa as well. That's fantastic. I'm from Preston. I'm surprised my Preston people haven't joined the call as well. Okay. Oh, Lagos, Nigeria. Thanks everyone for joining from wherever you're from. We really appreciate it. I'll move on to the next question. So we carry on really quick. How did you? Oh, people. Oh, wow. AFB LinkedIn. I think what we'll do as well, we'll probably send you a survey at the end of this webinar sometime this week or next week to find out if you have any feedback for us, because that's something we really take very kindly. I see my name there. That's good. Okay. I think we'll just stop this. Thanks for everyone for sharing, by the way. Just go back to the presentation now. Share concurrent slide. Okay. Just to anyone that knows me knows I'm a big fan of this man, Simon Sinek. And one of the things he emphasizes on is the golden circle. The golden circle basically means what do you do, how do you do it, and why you do it. And I thought it would be a good way of explaining how AFB actually started and what we actually do and why we do what we do. So what is AFB? AFB basically promotes achievements within education and engineering, particularly people from the BME background. So I'll tell you a story which is really close to me. I remember on my graduation day, it was time to take a picture. And I remember being the only Black engineer, I'm an engineer, but engineer to graduate from University of Leeds from the class of electronic and electrical engineering in 2016. You know, when I go to school, I always get kids asking me what happened to the rest of them. Did they drop out? But no, we didn't have people dropping out. I think it was a case of people not really knowing whether to study engineering. So what AFB does is basically promotes the achievement to actually let people see that they're actually engineers from different backgrounds as well. How do we do this? We do this through partnership with different organizations, such as Amazon, Microsoft, Arab, and so on. If you do go on our website, AFB, you see some of the fantastic sponsors that sponsor us. We also have tailored educational programs that we use as well, basically tailoring from primary school students all the way to university. We do a lot of networking events. Unfortunately, due to COVID, we haven't been able to have a physical event, but we should be back next year doing physical events. Consultancy, so we support a lot of companies aligning our strategies with the strategies for DNI, and also support different organizations when it comes to recruitment as well. So why do we do what we do? Picture this. Let's pick a university like University of Sheffield. If you have 100 students in that class, there's more likely to be 30 students from a BME background. But then you also have the issue of only 9 of them end up making it to the industry, which shows there's a problem. So what we do, as I emphasized on earlier, is that we try basically showing representation and inspiring the next generations of engineers. This is some of our sponsors, by the way. We're sponsored by different organizations. This is some I managed to pick up from the ICE to WSP, Bloomberg, Amazon, Shell, and so on. But like I said, I'll put the social media handle at the end of the presentation. If you do want to follow us or give us a shout out on how you enjoy this event, because I know you're going to enjoy it, please let us know. So negotiation comes in different ways. You know, I remember as a 9-year-old kid, you know, my mom, fantastic cook, by the way. But sometimes, you know, you crave a cheeky McDonald's that we always call it. And then you end up negotiating with a mom. But most of the time, you end up getting the same old answer of, we've got food in the fridge. So, so negotiation is not just all something that's big that you do with companies or you negotiate with, you know, lawsuits or whatever. It could actually be done on a small level, and we do it actually in a day-to-day. Now, anyone that knows me knows I'm a prudent character. And before I go on any holiday, if it's Thailand or Egypt, I try check TripAdvisor to actually see how much things do cost, especially from the airport to the hotel. One of the things I get is a taxi man thinking is a smart person, trying to basically bump the price because he sees me, I'm from England, he's thinking I'm going to make money, but not to me. Anyone that knows me knows I stand firm. So negotiation could come even, you know, negotiating with a taxi driver on a day-to-day basis as well. And the third one, salary negotiation. Let's imagine, let's say you're not really happy with your current financial status with your current company, and then you get an offer from a different company, let's say £10,000 more. Your company might not be in a position to basically match that salary. So what you have to do is sit with the company and sort of negotiate a number together that makes you two comfortable. So that's another negotiation scenario that you might be doing that you might not know it's actually a negotiation, because people normally think it's something on a big scale. Now, today we've got a fantastic speaker, Sara. Thanks for coming as well. Sara basically is a business and wargaming negotiation leader, PA consultant, and Sara is going to be giving us a lot of details on the do's and don'ts when it comes to negotiating. Over to you, Sara, as I put up your presentation right now.
Thank you, Samuel, and very, very interesting introduction. I appreciate that. And absolutely, it's every day and every hour of the day. We might not even realize it, that we are actually negotiating. I'm going to try and give you an overview, very, very overview-ish of the negotiation process, and especially my favorite, which is the Harvard negotiation process, which is interest-based, but more about that in a second. And then I'm going to give you also an overview of a tool you can really use, even with your friends, to simulate and prepare for your negotiation, which is the exciting business wargaming methodology. And Samuel, apologies, I will do like Boris Johnson with his next slide. Please.
Next slide.
It's not a real slide for children, but yeah. If you haven't seen that meme, by the way, brilliant. So as I mentioned to you, introduction to what's a negotiation, kind of what is it, what is a negotiation framework, and also then a few tips and tricks of what I have learned over the years around how to prepare properly for any negotiation, and obviously scaling it up or scaling it down, depending if it's a negotiation with your friends and family or if it's a big negotiation coming up for you. And then, Samuel, if that's all right, if you can put the next slide, please. And then if we can just ask the audience, and then, the next one as well. And if we can ask the audience, I don't know if a poll is possible or maybe.
Yes, I'm just going to pull it up now, launch it now.
So basically, we want to find out if what you see on the slide here are two. There is a third one I will touch upon in a second, but just to ease you into it. Are you more a soft negotiator? So somebody who would look at, participants being friends, as you can see on the slides, making concessions and, not wanting to rock the boat, and there is nothing wrong with that? Or are you more of a more hard negotiator that, it feels like Samuel might be that one, that nothing will go through, you are not going to compromise, and, it's like a fight or a competition and you will win. So which one are you more? So soft approach or hard approach? Let us know. Yes, depends on the circumstances. That's an interesting one. But in general, let's say you're being very self-aware. What is your tendency going towards? And let me know, Samuel, when you have the.
Yeah, we have. Well, we need 20 people to vote. So please, if you just join in, and there's a poll right now. If you could just vote, what kind of strategies you would use, and I mean, what kind of approach you will use. Like Sarah said, I grew up playing sports, and that's blending into my personality. So I'm a big fan of going in hard when it comes to trying to get what I need to get from people. All right, we'll give it 30 more seconds. Some people are not voting. Vote, guys.
It's late in the day. I do appreciate.
We'll give him more 20 seconds, then I'll end the poll.
No problem. And if you see any numbers, just to guess a rough.
Yeah, I'll share the result as well.
Thank you.
All right. Come on, guys. 10 seconds more. Okay. I'll end the poll and share results.
Yeah, that is really interesting and really not surprising. I mean, most of us, except Samuel, maybe you don't want necessarily to have a conflict and you just want to get on with it. So there is a third way, and Samuel, if you don't mind putting the next slide.
Yep.
And the third way is the kind of principled approach to negotiation. And that's what I'm going to talk to you a bit more about. It's really based on your interests, and you use those interests to actually influence and work with people. You don't use it against people. And the kind of approach where you get not only a win on your side, but a win-win is also particularly important when wherever you are, to also keep the relationship on one side and to build trust. And the intention is really to bring people to their senses, as I had one professor telling me, but not to their knees. And that is really, really important the more you do in all walk of life. And there is also particularly an important point here, which I will come back to also at the end of the presentation, is that it's about knowing yourself as a negotiator. It's really, really important. There are different things you can do to find out, and there are different tests, etc. But if you are self-aware and take the time to analyze yourself or ask your friends how you are, it's very important to know that, because especially when you are with different team members, the composition of the team who will be negotiating, being in business or in other walks of life, is quite crucial. So you can have an interesting combination that is based on people's strengths. And we cannot be good at everything in negotiation. But some people are good at that, some people are good at something else, and you actually use their strengths throughout. So that is also why it's so important to know yourself. And being a softer negotiation is not necessarily negative, but it's important to know that you are, and that you are able to maybe adapt in certain circumstances, or use a friend who's more of a principled negotiator as well. And obviously you will learn that also the more you do. So again, knowing yourself as a negotiator and self-awareness on that is quite key. And if you can put, Sam, please, the next one. So what is negotiation? So it's really obviously a communication process. I don't know, it sounds basic, but where you attempt to influence someone to give you what you need or want in exchange for something you have that they need or want. And it's really about finding between those two parties a way forward and an agreement. And in a negotiation process, there are 7 elements typically. And again, that's the Harvard model at the end. And I think, Samuel, you shared it already. It's the book Getting to Yes, which I would recommend. And I'm not paid by them, I promise, but I would recommend because it's a very, very also easy read and very practical. I really like that approach as well for that. So 7 elements. Interest. That is an absolutely crucial concept to get. It's really not position, but interest. And what is the difference, you would tell me? And I have a story for you on that. And it's also taken from the book, and I adapted it a bit, being also half French, and you will understand why in a second, with a bit of flavor. And it's the orange quarrel. So it's a story of two people fighting for an orange. And it's really about two chefs, basically, a French chef and a British chef who have just one orange and then need it to cook their dishes. On one side, the British chef wants to have the peels of the orange and really wants to actually use it to make a cake and really, have this kind of flavorsome cupcakes, and that's what they want. And then the French chef wants to have the orange as well to actually flavor his duck sauce and really do a flavorsome duck canard à l'orange. And that is what they are fighting over. So each wants the orange for themselves. And that is really an interesting one because they decide, okay, well, the best way to do it, you cut the orange in half and everybody has half. But what is quite interesting with this is actually if they had asked, what do you want to use it for? They would have found out that one wants to do it for cupcakes and the other one wants to have actually the juice. So one is the peels and the other one is the juice. You could have gotten 50% more if they were actually asking the question, why do you want the whole orange or what do you want to do with it? And everybody would have had 100% satisfaction and it would have been a win-win. I know it's a simplistic tale in a sense, but it really explains the importance of understanding the underlying interest of why you are doing something. And to come back to that as well, Samuel, I'm also a fan of Simon Sinek, and this is also the kind of why question is paramount in negotiations. And position is really, so you can never assume that negotiation is a zero-sum game, ever. No matter how bleak it looks, and the more you will be asking, what the underlying reasons, and the more you will have also a good relationship to find out, and you might have to ask it 5 times, even is a rule. Why are you doing that? Why is it so important to you? What do you want to achieve with this? Just drill down, and the persons eventually will open up and will tell you exactly why and what they want from the negotiation. So it could have been improved for this orange quarrel, and the British-French chef's relationship could have been better and enhance the whole British-French friendship. But again, it's not about winning in that case. It's about you wouldn't win with this orange story. You actually lost 50%. So this is an important one to keep in mind. So again, the wants, the needs, the concerns, the hopes and fears, understand those. And then you will get on your merry way to look at different options. And we will talk to that in a second as well. So after interest, so forget positions, it's all about interests. And position, again, is a thing that you say. Interest is the why behind the positions. Options, so options, and obviously you might already know all this, but options is obviously the best of all possible ways to deal with differing interests. So it's coming together and brainstorming what are the options we could think about. And if, again, and we will come back to that, you have a good relationship, good two-way communication, apologies, it's really about generating together those options and finding pieces of possible agreements here and there. And that's where you move it forward as well, these commonly generated options. The other concept is alternatives. And this is one that is particularly important as well, is you have to also be realistic. And you have to also think, if this doesn't work out for whatever reason, and nobody's fault necessarily, sometimes you don't find agreements despite your best efforts. But it's really about understanding. So if there is no agreements, what are the best alternatives for me? And it can be very different things. But thinking about it beforehand is crucial. So you will then know what's also your bottom line and what will also make you walk away. And you know also what happens if you don't get an agreement. And it's not that scary. It can be, going to another dealership for your car. It can be, buying a car on sale at an auction or whatever. It's about thinking it through. But also it's about thinking what the other ones, your counterparty, best alternative to a negotiated agreement is. And that sometimes can be more tricky. And that's what the concept is quite important here, that they call BATNA. So the best alternative to a negotiated agreement. You really, really need to drill into that one, because then it will tell you a lot about also what are the options and how they are shaped for the potential agreement. So far, so good. I didn't lost anybody on the route. I know it's quite a lot to take in at once, but don't worry, we're gonna go to also explaining how it works. Just, I think, 3 more. One is legitimacy. This is a very interesting one, and at times can be a bit daunting, and it depends on the negotiation you are actually conducting. But nobody wants to be treated unfairly. That's the bottom line. So it's really about, and no do others, obviously. It's really about finding external standards or precedents that you can actually use to build those options and to get to an agreement. What I mean by that is, obviously in international negotiations, they will bring out the treaties that they have done 20 years ago, and here is the detailed article. But it can be also, you know, from a scientific point of view, it can be a legal contract, it can be anything, as long as it's something that has been agreed and is seen as something reliable and robust. So having that at times, especially for high-stake negotiation, I'm not saying with your children necessarily, but with high-stake negotiation, it will be important to look into what has been done before. And if you have precedents or legal standards or legitimate standards that you can use. And again, it can be used on both sides. And it's really using that trump card of fairness. Then obviously communication, I know it's, it's really, really important. And a good two-way communication. So Samuel, that's my only challenge on your approach, on the hard approach, because what you want to do is create trust. And I have to say, in 20 years, I was very tempted at times to use the hard approach, to use my German style, my German other half. But it's really about thinking about the longer term, building that relationship. Even if you don't negotiate and you don't find an agreement this first time around, you might come again, and you don't want to have to break that relationship, because normally you can't come back from that. So it's really about thinking about the long game. Yeah, it's a marathon at times. So communication, good two-way communication, relationship, same. You want to build a place where people start to trust each other, because that will be more conducive more quickly to a good negotiation outcome as well, where people can also voice their interests. Don't forget, if you don't have a trusted kind of approach, people won't tell you what they're actually really, really think. No, they're not going to say anything. They're going to keep it close to their chest, and then you're not going to get the other 50% of the orange. Think about that, Sam. So commitment, so that's the other point. And also at times, oh God, at the beginning when I was young, a long time ago, commitment is an interesting one. So you are so happy, you are finishing the negotiation. You are thinking, oh yeah, that's great. You know, let's go and celebrate and have some drinks. Well, there is a step that is absolutely very, very important. It's about confirming the quality of the outcome and how you measure the promises made, but also that you put everything in writing. And I know it's a bit boring, but that everything is very clear and has agreed on every single thing. Take the time. That's my advice, because later on, you know, people can come back. Yeah, actually, I didn't understand it like that. I understand. And then you are, here we go again, starting again, the whole circle. So it's very important to put it down and to commit both sides to certain things and have clarity, and usually writing it down. So those are the 7 elements to a negotiation. I'm going to pause here if there are, and Samuel, please let me know if there are any burning questions on those before I go and explain how the model works. On the
I think what we'll do is we'll save the question too, because people will just let it drag on for a while. So we'll do everything, then questions after.
I don't want to bore you to death. I'm happy to have discussion. Okay, let's go to the next slide. That's also a very important one. Thanks, Sam. So this is obviously very stylized with a negotiation table in the middle, the interest-based negotiation process. And as you can see here, you have on the top what we talked about, the importance of building strong relationships. and with its counterpart on having a good two-way communication. Those two are a given. This is crucial. And typically, obviously, this is what you start with, even before you actually sit down. You want to talk to them, you prepare the meetings, whatever it is, but you want to also gather information. So it's about building that trust. And sometimes it can take a few months too before you actually go into, for especially the meatier negotiations. But really importantly here in relationships, it is be unconditionally constructive. This is also very, very important. So again, to build the trust, you want also to explain, the reasoning in how you communicate, to inquire about the other person's, what's important to them, and really listen. I know it's hard. Tell me about it. Really listen to actually what they're saying, but also what they're not saying. And also the behavior as well. It's not only about the words, it's about how people interact, etc. And we will come back to that in the preparation. When you have different roles in your team, it's really about also always having people observing and observing cues. It can be, obviously behavioral wise, but observing cues also what the words types they are using. So it can get into even the weeds on that, but you gather a lot of information around that. Then once you sit down at the negotiation table, it's again, you clarify the interests. Most often than not, as we discovered with the orange quarrel story, you would have positions being said to you. I want that, I want this. And it's about starting the discussion around finding out why do they want this, and probe. And again, ask why, as we said, and ask why not. And also share your interest. You might want to share it first. I know it's scary, but sometimes opening the door really, really builds the trust, and people will eventually reciprocate. I've never had a case where people actually didn't. And then it's about sitting down, and we talked about brainstorming options for mutual gain, and list them down, multiple options. Nothing is crazy at this stage. You want to think outside of the box as well. And then you are using, again, legitimacy. We talked about it, if and where appropriate. You might want to research possible standards or precedents, and you can use them to actually prove your point and get something from the other counterpart, or you want to use them, as we say, as a shield to protect yourself. So you can use them for both attack or defense, but again, always in a trusted relationship. We talked about then, once you have discussed all this and you are close to an agreement, it's also important to know, if it doesn't work out, what your alternatives are, to a negotiated agreement, and the other ones, the counterparts, BATNA as well. And then we talked about, if you have an agreement, making a commitment. So this is something I will leave with you. This circle, it is obviously very high level, and it can be obviously refined depending on what type of negotiation you have. But if you go through the motion when you prepare and you look at each of the different one and you think it through, it will really help you. And I'm gonna stop here as well. Again, Sam, if there is any questions before I move further down.
I think I've got a question before we move on.
Shoot.
So I think we can't ignore the impact culture has on our character, for example. And I think some cultures don't really encourage a debate sort of culture in a way. Yeah. Now, these kids are now grown up to being adults, and they've become this agreeable adult. Can an agreeable person be a good negotiator?
That's really a good question. And I was thinking also the other way around. There are some questions, you're right, especially towards Asia as well, which can be quite challenging in having this kind of discussion. I really do think it's about sometimes teamwork. So for me, as I mentioned at the beginning, if you are in a kind of business, bigger, meatier negotiation, it's about finding the right people for the right roles, who will be maybe the person negotiating and talking. You might want to use a person who might be agreeable, but then you will have maybe, I'm not saying it's a bad cop, good cop situation, but you might have another person with you. You might take Samuel with you, who might actually give them some post-it notes and saying, no, stop here. But it's really about the preparation and making sure that everybody has a role that also suits their strengths. And really that they also know their overdone strengths and I can share mine later on if you haven't seen it already, their overdone strengths. And this is really about discussing that. And in the preparation phase, you would list who is going to do what when, and then you will assess regularly after each negotiation meeting if actually you need to adapt certain things. When you are alone, I would say it's really about self-awareness. I think then you might want to also maybe discuss with a friend when you are having a negotiation, you know that is going to be maybe a bit harder or maybe a bit more difficult, that you might want to have a chat and look at other people's strengths. But I have to say, being agreeable is a good start to create trust. So you can also use that person for the first stage and then bring on, and collaborate with somebody for the next stages. So it's really about teamwork, Samira. That's what I want to get to.
Thank you very much.
So I also wanted to say here just a few words on the importance of preparation. I mentioned that in the answer to Samuel, but not only, so there are typical steps, and I will summarize them for you here. But again, I could do an hour on that, just let alone on negotiation preparation. So I have seen what worked really, really well is you want to obviously build a negotiation strategy. Again, if it's a small negotiation, maybe for buying a car or something more for personal matters, I would use this model and then just prepare and think about the interests, think about also different options you can suggest, and be ready also for your red lines, like some politicians say. But it's really about understanding what's your most desirable outcome and the least acceptable alternative. And when you have complex negotiation, we will look at zones of possible agreements between those, depending on the topics. And that's where we actually find out at certain stages what are the options where it can be agreed, especially if it's around things like pricing, or if there is a quantitative dimension. It's quite helpful for that. But for a car, buying a car, it's important that you know what's obviously your maximum price. You don't want to get pushed, but also what would you agree to pay a bit more? So at least you know it for yourself. You obviously don't say it straight away, but you know it for yourself. So it's about going through the motion of preparing that. And then it's really around, like we discussed with Samuel just now, preparing your roles and responsibilities, knowing your style and the ones of your team members, but also understanding, and that's a big work, the counterparties' roles and styles. Obviously, LinkedIn stalking might be one, but you want to go a bit beyond that and try to find out maybe what the person is about, how maybe the person has done some talks and interviews. So just analyzing as well who you're going to deal with. That is also quite important. Obviously, for big negotiation, people might go into the whole FBI profiling thing, and that, if there is a budget, why not? But if you want to take it, one step down, it's really about understanding who they are as individuals and trying to find out from their behaviors, what is their style? How would they negotiate, you think? And then it's also important to understand your negotiation environment. And I know, especially now virtually, it is so hard. It's so hard. You have to really think about that as well. And if it's also virtual and a bit of physical, you want even to think who's going to sit where, in what room, how are we going to go about this, how long. So there's a lot of processes to also look at. And you want also to think about your different stakeholders, your direct stakeholders, your indirect stakeholders. Who do you need, especially for complex negotiation? Who do you need to keep informed, etc., etc. So it's quite important to get a holistic view of the whole negotiation parties and those who could be influenced by that negotiation as well. So you might also save yourself sometimes going with some challenges. But the most important bit is also to rehearse. Once you have prepared this. And one of the favorite methods I use even with friends for personal negotiation sometimes, or salary negotiation, you want to have a kind of simulation, and you want to simulate what the other person might do. And that is where phoning a friend is quite useful. And they might play devil's advocate as well and see, how you could improve certain things. So that I have seen that that has been quite powerful. And one of the methods that we use for more meatier business negotiation is business wargaming. And Samuel, that's the next slide if you want to dive into that, if there is no question on the negotiation process and core interest-based model.
Before we dive in, I'll ask a question. So let's say before you go into a room, you know what number you want from them. But after getting into the room, you sort of sense them and you think, you know what, I think I could get more from this person. Would you advise going harder or just taking the number and walking out?
I would, yeah, it really depends somewhere on what we are talking about. If it's, a life-changing decision, or if you are just bargaining for somebody in a street vendor, who has its livelihood, depending on that. I would say the circumstances are quite important here. If it's obviously a big thing for you and it's not going to damage the other person, I would definitely try to go at it and see what else can you gain. Yes, because at the end of the day, if the person is ready to do that, they have a reason why they are ready to do that, meaning your baseline was wrong and your assumptions were wrong around what is the maximum price that you can ask for. But again, Samuel, there are different circumstances for me.
Thank you very much. We'll dive into the next.
Thank you. This is really about giving you a quick overview before we open up for questions around the exciting world of business wargaming. And forgive me, I'm very excited about this because that is something I really truly believe in. So business wargaming in a nutshell is a place where you can simulate things and have a kind of simulation of decision making, and where you can generate options. You can see also live the consequences of your actions and decisions in a safe to try, safe to fail environment. And this is quite important in big negotiation when there are so many different parties, especially in international negotiation, for example, or when there is a big contract negotiation or renegotiation, to really understand what each and every party think or do or might do, and to be really prepared for what's coming. So I have used it a lot in international negotiations, this tool, because obviously with different countries, etc., it's quite important to drill into it. And this is particularly helpful also when you can zoom in. So you can look at one particular team or country in this instance, or you can zoom out and see the whole ecosystem on how they would actually, what would be the interdependencies, how would they negotiate with each other. And you can really, really have a better negotiation strategy and a better plan for it. And at the same time, it also builds consensus within your team, and you can really rehearse, what the other team might do, and then make sure that you amend your plan if you have found certain gaps or certain things that you should do differently. But also, very importantly, it's about content, but it's about behavior. And negotiation is really about both, but more often than not, it's about behavior. And being able to rehearse as a team how each and every role and the team members will talk, will react, will make a proposition is quite crucial, because people think when you're having a big negotiation that they would come in the room, yeah, we're just going to chat, but no, that doesn't happen like that. So it's really, really important that there is a kind of rehearsal. It's like a ballet dancing. You would actually want to rehearse before you're actually presenting it to the Opéra Garnier or another location. So that is what it is about, this safe environment to try things. And next slide, please, Sam. And as I mentioned to you, there are different components. So again, for more complex negotiation, business war games, you would have, a lot of modeling, potentially quantitative also dimension to see the impact on shareholder value, to see the impact on different things, which I'm going to pass on this. And you have also some technology and digital stuff to make it very real. Because once you're doing one of those, you are not sitting down and having a PowerPoint experience. You're actually doing something. You are taking actions. You are making decisions. And that's why it's quite powerful, because you would challenge biases. You would see your blind spots. And that is something that has a lot of value for people to do that regularly. So I mentioned what is it on the top right. It's a very crude schematic to explain how actually on earth it works. So you have obviously the organization, team, organizations, that's in blue, and they will be there playing themselves. But then you would have the red teams. So those are the resistant interactive environment who are usually role played, especially in negotiation. You cannot have the real people for obvious reasons, but they would role play, you know, for example, the counterparts, obviously, but maybe also how the media might react if it's something that is in the news and is important, etc., etc. And you would see again live those actions, and they would surprise you at times as well with some unexpected news and decisions. And then in green, you will have the control team making sure everything goes well on the day, and that would be us most of the time. And that is where also we capture the data to be able to then amend those big negotiation strategies. And last slide, please, Samria, thank you. And I'm not gonna dive into it a bit more, obviously very happy for you guys to look at those slides afterwards. But it really depends for an organization where they're at in the process, so we help them, and there are different designs of business wargaming here. I just thought I put and I highlight the bottom right corner here, depending on the challenges. So for negotiations, but people would come also to us for different reasons when they need also to test. You know, it can be emergency plans, it can be pretty much anything. But I particularly like this for negotiation because you can really see, and I will tell you some stories afterwards if I am asked the question, obviously without naming names, about certain situations I have seen where you have those aha moments where they suddenly realize, oh God, really, this person would do that, our counterpart would do this, yes, they would do this. So how can we react? So it's a learning place where you can really be in seeing or being even at times into somebody else's shoes and into your counterpart in negotiation. And that is really, really so valuable. But Samuel, I'm going to pause here and stop here and take your question, and I cannot wait to have a discussion.
Okay, I think the way we're going to do the question is if you could just type in question in the chat box, then I'll call your name, and then you could unmute yourself and ask the question directly.
Hello.
Okay, hello there,
Yeah.
Bumi. Go on.
Yeah, I'm good. Could you ask the question, please? Because currently I can't ask the question currently.
Okay, she said, what's the best approach for difficult negotiations when dealing with people with irrational behavior or managing existing perception?
Yeah, that's a very good question with me. And yes, there are plenty of those. That's a challenge at times. Yes, and it's really about preparing on how to de-escalate. So there is a de-escalation process on dealing with difficult people. And it's really about looking at focusing really, really consistently on the interest. But there are also certain tactics and techniques that you can apply. And I would say, obviously, it depends on what kind of, how they are difficult or what is the difficulty that you are facing. But it's really about having a system to really focus on the interest and then de-escalating as well. But it can be done, Bunmi, but it's not necessarily enjoyable.
I'm guessing she's still in the car. Thanks. The next person is Ahmed. If you just want to unmute yourself and ask the question.
Hi. So, can you hear me?
Yeah, yeah.
All right. Okay. Yeah. Thanks for that, Sarah. I mean, there's a fairly common saying that the best negotiation is one where neither party is happy with the outcome. What's your view on that, on such a saying?
That's interesting. In what context, Hamid? What do you mean?
So, for instance, you've got maybe a construction project, for instance, that hasn't gone well, and there are maybe claims to be made. So the contractor is making a certain claim against a client, and there has to be a negotiation on how much has to be paid. Maybe the contractor is expecting, I don't know, maybe $10 million. The client thinks it should be $5 million, and they come to somewhere in the middle. So the client is going to feel, I've paid too much. The contractor feels he's paid, he's received less than he deserved, because it's somewhere in the middle. Because I think the rationale behind that saying is that if one person is happy with the outcome, then chances are someone else has been cheated. So yeah, what your view on that principle is?
No, thanks, Hamid. That's really an interesting point. So for me, and that's why it's absolutely crucial. And again, it depends on the circumstances, and sometimes you cannot find an agreement. And you know, that's again unfortunate, but sometimes it's better too, on knowing when to walk away and when to actually saying no in the right way. But there is also something around if both parties are not satisfied, or if one is satisfied, one is not, they have not applied the interest-based negotiation model. And then there is also the problem of trust. In those cases, like for example, also in trade unions negotiation, this is where you have a certain process and then you really need to try and build the trust. And that is where, before you enter in negotiation, I would always suggest that there is a period then, and you might want to extend it. It can be even 6 months or a year at times, where actually this is being built before you sit down and negotiate. Because there is no point starting a discussion or a talk if people are not on, you know, ready to negotiate and want to find an agreement that is mutually beneficial. So it's all about having that mutual gain mindset, I would say, that is so important.
Thank you. We'll go for this questions quick. Ollie's got a question.
Yes, thanks for the presentation so far. Very, very interesting. To what extent do you think that the perception or perceptive filter of the other party affects the outcome of a negotiation? So where a lot of people will negotiate, their first negotiation will probably be something like the salary, for example, within the organization. But if you have a system where it's not the recognition that there is even a gap isn't fully appreciated or understood, that can create problems. So to what extent do you think the sort of perceptive filters of the other person could actually affect the outcome of a negotiation?
Absolutely, Oli. This is it's a vast topic. This is a vast topic, and I know on what it touches as well, which I'm not going to get down that rabbit hole. but it is also very, very important that as negotiators ourselves, to start the change too, we are maybe aware of our biases. And then also we might raise those biases into the other person's eyes. But this has to be done once, obviously, you build a trusted relationship. But there is ways to actually raise that at certain stages. Obviously, I appreciate in a business context when you negotiate a salary, that might not be the easiest of things. But it's really important to actually convey that in the right way at the right time. But also only to be aware of your own. And this is right. A two-way street. Yeah, it is a tricky topic. But about, you know, raising it, mentioning it, this is how we're going to make a change. It will take time. So.
Thank you.
Michael.
Good evening. Thank you for the presentation. So I'm asking now from a perspective of someone, you know, just going into the industry, for instance, for the first time. And you are in a position where you have to negotiate your salary. And you're faced with the HR, and then you feel the amount you've been offered is not enough, and you know you want to negotiate higher. But then the external factors, like you mentioned before, like the external standards, are not fully understood by, you know, the HR. You know, you're kind of an engineer, and you know your competence, you know how much you can bring to the company. But then you're faced with a HR person who may not necessarily appreciate, you know, the things you say you can do. So what do you do in such situation?
Michael, I feel the real situation. Yeah. So, thanks, Michael, for sharing. I appreciate that. This is obviously always quite tricky. I would use the legitimacy here. If there is a way to have, you know, some obviously it might not be easy to get, but if you have some standards or precedent contracts that you can show that HR persons that actually show the salary as well and the bracket, etc., whatever information you can find that would go into the legitimacy and support that and have the legitimacy standard as a sword to attack that HR person in a good way and in the right diplomatic approach and in a good two-way communication, Michael, I would try that. I have done that in the past. at the right time in the process. And once you have obviously a good two-way communication and you're building that relationship, that really does help. And sometimes it's not true, obviously, but sometimes also they don't necessarily are aware, or they might not be empowered in the right way as the HR person. So there is also something about who you are negotiating with and confirming who that person is, or if it's the right person you need to talk to. But Michael, I don't know if that helps, but the legitimacy angle is definitely one I have used, and it really does work. You just need to get your hands on it, which is not easy.
Thank you very much.
Thank
That helps. Yeah.
I think Nika made a statement. Nika, do you want to share the comment?
I was hoping you were going to
Sorry.
read it out, but it's fine. No, thank you. It's a very insightful presentation. I found as a woman in the industry that you're essentially not expected to negotiate, and when you do, people almost assume that you're contentious. So how do you negotiate without coming across as contentious? Because you're not being contentious, you're just asking for what you actually deserve, and what probably others that don't have as much skill, well, in your opinion anyway, have been able to to achieve. So how do you do that without coming across as contentious? Are there any techniques, or and without compromising your who you are, if you're not a very kind of chatty person, for example?
Yes, thanks for that. That's really interesting, and it is really a very big challenge as women. I have to say, for me, it has been always, and it's maybe not a negotiation thing. It's a confidence thing when we need to change minds. And it's really about, you might not like it, but it's really about applying what's right. So I always have used the kind of ethical dimension. And that's one of my, if you want, overdone strengths, where I will always fight if I see injustice, and including obviously in the first place, not enough necessarily for myself, but I will try and do that a bit more. And it's really about, I would then go in a zone where I would prepare very, very carefully what are the different arguments. Again, legitimacy, having some standards, and that you are, having the documents to prove it. And then really standing up for yourself in that sense. And if you have those different things together, it will work. It's really about the perception of the other about you. And it doesn't mean you compromise yourself, in my view, but it's really about also, well, it's about negotiating what's best for you at this point in time. And also, if I'm honest, I am at the point, and maybe it's after when you get closer to 45, I don't care anymore what the other side is thinking. But at the same time, I appreciate you might want to compromise with certain aspects of your personality. But it's really for me about being confident, preparing, obviously, the content on what you want to negotiate, and then really trying it out. And the more you do it, the more you actually will build that negotiation muscle. And for Lion, I don't know if that's helpful, but that's my personal.
No, that's very helpful. Thank you.
Thanks. I think we got Shireen.
Hi, yes. Thank you, Sarah, for the presentation. I'm so curious about if you are approaching negotiation from the interest-based point of view and the other party is approaching from a hard negotiating point of view, what then? Is it really about being clear on your bottom line?
Yeah, Shireen, that's a very good question. And it's really joining again, I think, about the relationship. If you are arriving at the table and you actually have that impression is that you haven't built enough the communication and relationship to really be having this kind of beginning of a trusted relationship. I would actually continue to do that and try to, before you even sit down, again, if it's a mid-tier negotiation, yeah, I appreciate for others, it might not be the case. I would really try and, bring that person to have a cup of coffee or tea or whatever, and build that dialogue, and really asking that question 20 times why, to really find out why they are still in the hard position, and really open it up, but outside of the negotiating table. is really, really important. And especially when there are bigger negotiations, it can be in the corridor negotiation, what we talk about often, or you know, invite them for dinner and have a bite to eat. But Shirin, if that continues, I would then, you know, you walk away. For me, that obviously depends on the content, and if it's obviously you are mandated to negotiate on behalf of your business, you can't necessarily do that quickly. But it's about the relationship building, the communication, and if that still doesn't happen, then you know you agree to disagree.
Thank you.
I'm just looking for the questions. Mara's got a question.
Hi, Sarah. Thank you.
Hi, Mara.
2 questions. If you were doing Brexit, how would you have done it better?
Oh God.
Give us better. Did you look at the Brexit negotiation and think I could have approached it better? And question number 2, what has been the example? I know you might not name names of one of the most complex projects or complex situations you've had to negotiate.
Thanks, Mara, and thanks. It's also recorded, so I might have to be a bit careful to answer your first question. Yes, Brexit. Obviously, I would say the challenge for me is being half French, half German, being European, and having looked at a lot of Brexit negotiation and also with former clients, etc. It was a very, very humbling experience to really understand. And I had to work quite a lot on myself to really, you know, shut down the emotional aspect of this, because how I was educated, Second World War kid of you know, French-German reunification, etc., and all that baggage as well behind, that you actually have to consider the interest and why certain, not everyone, why certain people in the UK voted for Brexit, and how they came to that conclusion. Not without any judgment. Yeah, it's very important, Mara, and really understand the interest behind that, however hard that is, I have to say, because you are so emotionally invested. How I would have done things differently, obviously, I think you could go back, way back, with the first referendum, etc. But I think there is a fundamental big difference for me, what I have found out in working on Brexit for many years, between 2016 and 2020, actually. It's that it's really about, there is a big disconnect and a difference of opinion between the people who live in continental Europe and who have experienced Second World War and have a different vision of what the European Union is all about. And that's one counterpart, one position, one interest. And that's their main driver, is that security and making sure that there is peace, versus, you know, some people in the United Kingdom who have experienced it differently and want to, you know, join at the time in the 70s for economical reasons, etc., etc. So there is all that needs to be understood before you can even, you know, attempt to understand this. But having said that, I think at times it would have been helpful for both parties, for that matter, to understand the interests and to understand that deep difference between why they are doing this differently, and not getting emotional like they did at times and going then into, you know, the tit for tat. So Mara, that's one answer. So on the yes, I finally was able to negotiate last night with my husband. We're gonna change and have a new shed. Yes. So that took me a while, and especially if obviously you have emotional connection, it's so much harder to negotiate. I have to say the one I was particularly humbled by is when I was in the United States many years ago. I was a young graduate, and I was studying Hurricane Katrina's crisis management or crisis mismanagement 1 year after it happened, so in 2006. And I was, you know, basically nobody, and I was just a researcher, and I wanted to interview everybody. And I thought, okay, I want to go to Washington and I want to interview this person, this person, this person who are dealing with Hurricane Katrina. And eventually I managed to get there. So that was quite an achievement, but it also shows that if you don't try, you don't get. And sometimes you have doors that are being opened because you are negotiating, but you are negotiating with the right intentions. And again, you are here to build trust. So that is quite important. But thanks, Mara, for asking the question.
I've got a question. It might sound like a funny question. With AI coming in the future, what impact do you think, or what benefit do you think it could have on negotiation?
Geez, how much time do you have?
we got about 5 minutes.
AI, yeah, that's really interesting. I think what AI might be quite useful for, I was thinking about legitimacy, popped in my head straight away, around, you know, the standards, precedents. So that would accelerate a lot of our preparation. So everything around that might support preparation. After that, I think for me, and it's a lack of understanding about exactly what AI could potentially do. But I think imagining, and maybe it's my generation, imagining robots negotiating is not something I can necessarily picture as yet. There is something about negotiations that is fundamental. It's really about reading those different clues and the behavioral aspect of things. It's not necessarily a kind of mechanical, if I may use that pun, but mechanical approach, you know, A will give you B, will give you C. No. And sometimes you need to make some connections that you haven't thought about. I appreciate there are very big computers and they're doing great things, but I think negotiation is so complex in all the different elements that come together. I can't see it yet, but I don't mind being challenged on that.
Thank you. I think we'll take too much questions, then we'll wrap up for the day. Anyone? Ollie's got a question.
One on neurodiversity that I saw in the chat, and I don't know if you had a view on neurodiversity. I think it was, someone mentioned that. I think I see it here. Something about how to improve outcomes for those who are neurodiverse and lack high levels of emotional intelligence. You know, you need that for negotiation.
I see a neurodiversity, yes, but there are also, if I understood correctly, I would absolutely encourage to have diverse teams. And this is something, and obviously, again, playing to people's strengths, but having some divergent views as well from people who don't think necessarily like me is something I absolutely adore. And this is sometimes, especially in negotiation, and I appreciate you might not, you know, you have to put the right person in for the right role. But at the same time, there is so much that can be done in the preparation phase to support, you know, thinking differently and thinking about new options that I would absolutely love to be able to do that more. And I'm glad to see that there is more and more, you know, push for neurodiversity in different businesses. And I hope we can all do our bit for that. But I appreciate, Folayan, that the kind of negotiation angle and especially the kind of communication aspects doesn't suit everyone. And it's really about finding then when you have your team who has the strength in what and use that strength appropriately at the right time. But the combination of strengths is what will make you win ultimately.
Thank you. I'll try to squeeze in 2 more questions. One from Ollie. Ollie said, you spoke about building your inner resilience and confidence, as this is a really important quality to have during negotiation. What exercise or activities can you use to build the confidence when it comes to negotiating?
I would say obviously prepare the negotiation or whatever small negotiation come up for you, being, you know, even if it sounds completely crazy, for you having a negotiation with your husband tomorrow or with your wife, or even with your children, try to take a piece of paper and use the model and write it down, even if it's just 1 line, a few words for each, and then go for it. Try different things. And do the same as well when you are, you know, buying a car or trying to negotiate whatever in a supermarket or at a vendor stall, etc. It's about this practice. It's about building that negotiation muscle. The more you do it, the more confident you will become. But it's a confidence that is not arrogance, right? This is really important as well. It's about building your muscle on also knowing your strengths as a negotiator. And then similarly, when you know that there is a negotiation, maybe you are not so comfortable or you know you are not necessarily going to be good at, call a friend. Find someone who can help you and also who can put you and practice and rehearse if it's something like a salary negotiation or something that is extremely important to you. So that's what I would definitely recommend doing.
Thank you very much. And the final question, this person, Bassi said, so you apply for a job, as you know, they always tell you what salaries you want, but then you get rejected because they're not able to match your salary. And the person asked, would it be a good negotiation practice to offer to accept less than the expected pay?
So you would offer less than your worth?
So, okay. So stick to your worth. Basically, that's what you're saying.
No, I'm not saying that, but it obviously depends on the personal circumstances, and I wouldn't want to assume. But for me, there is something again, and we go back to why would you accept something that you know in deep down that is not right. Obviously, there are different stages in life, and you have sometimes to make a compromise because of certain situations you are in, and absolutely, we all have been there. But if you are at a certain time in your life where you know that's not right, but you will definitely try and find something else. I would not recommend at any point in your life, albeit it's easily said when you're younger, it's very hard. But later on in your life, I would not recommend not being paid your worth. Absolutely not.
So thank you very much. So the what I got from that is basically know your worth and work around it.
And
so
it's linked with building the confidence muscle.
True. Just to round up, if you do want to connect with Sara, she's on LinkedIn. You could basically connect with her on LinkedIn. And I'm hoping, Sara, you don't mind people messaging you and giving you all the praises you truly deserve, because this was a truly fantastic presentation. You could connect with me as well on LinkedIn. I do like making new friends because I don't have enough already. Message me if it's feedback, comments, or insults. I do take them really kindly. So yeah, message me. That'll be fine. Thank you all for attending this fantastic event. Like I said, it's going to be recorded and put on YouTube. So if you do want some tips, that shouldn't be an issue. But then thank you very much for taking time out to attend this event, especially working from home. Everyone wants a break. We really do appreciate you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. And please
Thanks.
don't contact me for divorce. Take care, everyone.
Oh yeah, may I mention we've got a fantastic award, by the way, coming up soon. If you could check it on the AFB website, make sure you register. I was an award winner as well in 2018, which is one of the proudest memories in my life. Getting recognized. So please check out all of our events as well online. We'll truly appreciate your presence at this event. But yeah. Thank you very much, everyone. Check out event www.afbe.gov.uk/events. I'll repeat myself, www.afbe.gov.uk/events. Thank you very much.